Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Conversation with Barry Levinson and Denzel Washington at the 45th Toronto International Film Festival. I'm Cameron Bailey. I'm the artistic director and the co-head here. I want to welcome you, and I apologize for the delay in getting started. Before we begin, though, I do want to thank some of our partners in putting all of this together. Our lead sponsor, Bell, our major sponsors, RBC, L'Oreal Paris, and Visa, and our major supporters, the Government of Ontario, Telefilm Canada, and the City of Toronto. Tonight's event is sponsored by Braun Studios in celebration of their 10th anniversary. A big thanks to Aaron and Brenda and the whole Braun team for supporting this year's festival and dreaming up these conversations with us. Tonight's conversation with Barry Levinson and Denzel Washington will take about a half an hour, and towards the end of the conversation, we will open it up to questions from you, our audience. And you can submit those questions via the chat function, which you can find in the bottom left corner of your screen. And to introduce Barry and Denzel and moderate what I'm sure is going to be a great conversation, we've got Scott Feinberg. Scott's a veteran awards journalist with The Hollywood Reporter. He also hosts the award-winning weekly podcast Awards Chatter and previously wrote for the Los Angeles Times. His next book will be about the history of Oscar campaigns. Scott, over to you.
Be here. I'm sorry I'm not on the ground with you for what would have been my 14th consecutive TIFF, but congratulations to you on taking unimaginable circumstances and putting together a still terrific film festival. And I do also want to acknowledge Braun and, as you said, Brenda and Aaron Gilbert, the bruh and the on in Braun. And this is a major anniversary for them. And our guest tonight, who I'm going to just everyone knows who they are, but we're going to give you a little bit of a bio just to remind how many great things they've each been a part of. Barry Levinson worked as a comedy writer for Carol Burnett and Mel Brooks in the 1970s, a decade in which he also co-wrote the screenplay And Justice for All, which earned him his first Oscar nomination. In 1982, he made his directorial debut with Diner, for which he received another screenwriting Oscar nomination, marking the beginning of a remarkable run of directing that continues to this day. Just a few examples, of course. 1984's The Natural, 1988's Rain Man, for which he won the Best Directing Oscar, and the film won Best Picture. 1989's Good Morning Vietnam, 1990's Avalon, for which he received another screenwriting Oscar nomination, 1991's Bugsy, for which he received another Best Director Oscar nomination, and we keep going, 96's Sleepers, 97's Wag the Dog, 99's Liberty Heights, 2001's Bandits, 2014's The Humbling, which was at TIFF, as was The Bay, another recent Barry Levinson film, and a host of Emmy-recognized TV films, including You Don't Know Jack, Phil Spector, The Wizard of Lies, and Paterno. So, Barry, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And great to have you. And our second guest, meanwhile, is best known as one of the greatest stage and screen actors of his generation, and more recently, a very fine director as well. Most people first discovered him on the TV drama series St. Elsewhere, on which he appeared for 6 years. Then for 1987's Cry Freedom, for which he received his first Oscar nomination. 2 years later for 1989's Glory, for which he received his first Oscar. And since then, he has been doing great work with a consistency matched by few others. 1990's Mo Better Blues, 1992's Malcolm X, which was another Oscar nomination. 1993's Philadelphia. 1999's The Hurricane, another Oscar nomination. 2000's Remember the Titans. 2001's Training Day, another Oscar. 2004's Man on Fire, 2006's Inside Man, 2007's American Gangster, 2012's Flight, another Oscar nomination, 2016's Fences, a nom for both acting and producing one of the year's Best Picture nominees, which he also happened to direct, and 2017's Roman J. Israel, another Oscar nomination. And we just want to mention the directing credits, of course. 2002's Antoine Fisher, 2007's The Great Debaters, and the aforementioned Fences. Denzel Washington, thank you so much for being with us.
Can you see me?
Gotcha. Yeah, you're looking good. Guys, it's so great to have you, and thank you for doing this. I think the first thing that we should address is the fact that while you, I don't believe, have ever worked together directly yourselves, you, I believe, met fairly recently at a screening, and you have a lot in common, not least the fact that you both worked a lot with Braun, and you both have a lot of family members who are involved with Braun. Yeah. So I wonder if you can just give a little sense of that? Maybe starting, Barry, with you, and we'll go to Denzel.
My son Sam wrote and directed this summer during the pandemic. It was a two-actor piece. Denzel's son, John David, and Zendaya, and they did a film this summer, which was they shot very quickly and something like a 16-day schedule, and so that was picked up by Netflix, and I have to say it's wonderful work, and Denzel. John David is extraordinary in the film. I mean, it's an amazing performance. So you got to be really pleased. I mean, he's doing quite well.
Nah, he's all. Yes, I am with all of our children doing their own thing in this business.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, and we should say Bron was involved, Denzel, with, I know, Fences, Rum J. Israel, and the forthcoming Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which we'll talk about. Barry, and let's not leave out the ladies here. Barry, your daughter is a senior officer at Bron. Denzel, your daughter Katya is a production executive there. Another daughter is an actress who's working with Bron. You guys you're going to be able to retire soon and just let these guys take care of you, right? I hope you don't, but and actually, Barry, I just want to mention one other, if you want to say anything about Harry Haft, which is another upcoming collaboration with them.
Yes, which we shot in Hungary last summer. Ben Foster is in the lead with a kind of real an ensemble cast, terrific. He's quite extraordinary. I mean, the setting is, or the kind of the backlog, it is in the concentration camps that there were the prisoners who were held there would end up having to fight for the entertainment of the guards, and it was literally, if you fight and you win, you live another day, and that's the backstory to this piece, which takes place between 1949 and 1963, and it deals with the aspects of post-traumatic stress disorder. And at the same time, it is a romance of a man ultimately finding love and getting an understanding of and dealing with his past and the nightmares of that. So it's an exploration of trauma in a sense that I haven't quite seen done before. So I was really fascinated by the script.
Well, we'll look forward to that for sure, along with Ma Rainey. But before we go any more into the present, folks may be interested, I think, in your guys' paths to this business. And Denzel, I wonder if we can start with you, because when I once interviewed you before, the way you described it, you went from pre-med to pre-law to journalism to theater to film. So can you just explain, how did we connect the dots from pre-med to I guess a medical show in some ways on TV?
It was the only thing I could pass. It was the only the only class I could actually pass. Now, I tell young people that there's nothing wrong with a liberal arts education. And I tell people, you don't have to know at 17, 18 years old what you're going to do the rest of your life. So, it's okay to go to college not knowing what you're going to be and what you're going to do, and figure it out, hopefully figure it out.
And for you, was it I think a summer program that was instrumental in kind of directing you to that you had this gift?
That's the story that's told, but I did a musical first, and I found out I couldn't sing. One has to recognize one's limitations. So that was first, but yeah, I did a show up at it just chose me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And Barry, a guy from Baltimore, winds up writing for TV. What was your was the dream always to be a director, or I know writing was the first few years of your career almost exclusively? Was that in your mind a stepping stone to get to directing?
No, I had no thoughts of ever being in this business. It wouldn't even occur to me. I mean, I didn't know anybody that was even connected remotely with the business. So I had no, other than the fact that I loved films. But I would talk about them and I was fascinated by them, but I would never, it wasn't an ambition of mine. It wasn't even on my radar in any way. So I kind of stumbled into it, actually, to be honest with you. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, the one thing that happened, I got a job working when I was in college. I got a job working at a television station. It was a training program. And one of the things you used to do was roll the commercial breaks into the Late Show and the Late Late Show. And so I got a chance to see two movies a night, 6 days a week. I saw films I had never seen or knew about. I mean, everything from Preston Sturges films to I never even heard of Citizen Kane or any of those, films of that. And I began to see these films. And that was the beginning. Even then, I had no idea. But I suddenly began to watch this and get fascinated by all of these, the history of film.
And I did hear a story.
Cinema Paradiso.
Yes.
Cinema Paradiso. Yeah, in the Telecine area where we were doing it.
A quick follow-up for Barry before I ask a similar question to Denzel. But Barry, when you were early on in the 70s getting into the business, I read a story about you were a writer on High Anxiety, the Mel Brooks film, and I understand that Mel it was both acting and directing in it, and you'll see how this may connect to Denzel in a second. Where I think as a actor, when he was an actor, he still wanted some direction, and I understand that he, in some way, you were one of the people he maybe turned for feedback about what he was doing in front of the camera.
Well, no, it was there were 3 writers that worked with him, and he was acting in the film, so we would be there at the monitor and you'd see it, and so you began to, and he was very, very open. And sometimes you wander over and say, Mel, I was wondering if you would do this, maybe that might, and sometimes he would get crazy, like, no, are you out of your mind? But other times he would go, oh, that's interesting, and let's try that. And that was the beginning of seeing things and say, what happens if you do this instead of that? What happens maybe if you just look and you delay the line, little moments like that. And I have to say just really quickly, I mean, he was extraordinary because I used to talk about these diner guys that I knew, my friends, and he said to me one day, you should write a film about them. And he referenced Fellini's Ibidaloni, which I hadn't seen, and he mentioned that. And so he gave me that encouragement and then that thought, and that ultimately, stuck.
Led to the directorial debut. Now,
so let me
Denzel,
ask you a question, Barry.
Yeah.
I'm about to direct a picture, a love story. It's a beautiful love about love and loss. What movies do I need to watch?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
Right.
That's a big question, because especially, what would you think of a great love stories? They're all different.
Love and loss.
I mean, they're all types, because you can go from Breathless, which is sort of has this romantic thing with, some dark edges to it, right. or going all the way back to the much more melodramatic romance things, which is not exactly in fashion in these times. But it's a hard question to answer because it's the most, not to scare you, it's the most delicate thing to work with, because how to handle a romance is a tough line, because on one hand it gets to be too romantic in a sense that we don't believe it, and how do you find that fine line of credibility at the same time to feel the passion of two people and the frustrations and trying to communicate and all those things that go with it.
Right.
I'm just going to inject, for whatever it's worth, my 2 cents. Wuthering Heights and Camille, Love and Loss. That comes to mind right away.
What about
but anyway.
A Brief Encounter?
Yes,
it's so good.
That's very good. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And apparently isn't that what inspired The Apartment as well?
Did
I
it?
think that's, yeah, Billy Wilder was into it. Anyway, Denzel,
The Green
you were
Banner is so well handled. That is a good one to mention.
absolutely, absolutely. Denzel, obviously, there were many years of you being an actor exclusively before you dabbled in directing for the first time, and I just wonder who of the directors that you worked with prior to directing were the directors who had the greatest influence on you. I think the one that you, I believe, worked with more than any other was the late Tony Scott. You guys did 5 movies over a period of 15 years: Crimson Tide, Man on Fire, Deja Vu, Taking Pelham 1, 2, 3, and Unstoppable. I don't know if that's your answer, but I had to ask because I wonder, you guys must have had something special there.
I just worked with another great director, Joel Cohen, and I said, what about stealing? He said, oh, everybody steals. But steal from somebody good. Steal from the best.
Yeah.
There's no new ideas. They're all been done before. But if you're gonna steal from the best. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's okay if I steal from you, Joel.
But in those, what made you even want to venture into directing?
Nothing. My producing partner, Todd Black, just felt like he thought I'd be a good director. I didn't believe him, so I procrastinated for about 10 years until they backed me into a corner. We had the budget, the money, the script, we had everything. And I finally said, in fact, I was in Toronto for the festival, and Peter Rice, who was running Searchlight, I think then, he got me to sign a napkin saying, I promise to direct. He has it somewhere. So I was a reluctant director. I still don't think I know that much about it, but I'm learning more about it.
Well, you did a great job.
From some of the best.
You did a great job with Fences.
Well, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 80% of it is casting, right? So I casted the right people. The writer was pretty good. Viola Davis, she may have a career. She may work out for her.
Yeah.
Well, so I think I get the sense, I know actors like being directed by you guys. I get the sense also that you like working with actors. Barry, so many wonderful performances in your films. What is it about the interaction with actors that you kind of enjoy the most?
It's a hard question to answer. I think what happens is there's a moment in time, and it continues through a movie, that there's a growth as it goes along, because you're both learning. If you have just sort of locked in, this is for me personally, if you're locked in to that this is it and this is that and that's that, it's one way to go. But the other is sometimes you discover things as you go along that add to the character, and then it becomes richer than maybe what either one of you envisioned. And there's that, the searching for some of these unknown moments that somehow tell the audience something. It's sort of ill-defined, but can I give you just one little example?
Please.
When we were doing, I was working with Dustin on Rain Man, and we're doing one of these scenes very early in the film, and it's in a little coffee shop, and we did a take, and after the take, I said, Dustin, the character seems too depressed, and that the autistics we've seen, they're like busy, they're constantly, involved in something, and he said, well, let me think about the thing. I said, you can look up at the ceiling. I just said in passing, it's acoustic ceiling. How many tiles are up there? How many, whatever, that you're busy with it. So he said, all right, let me try that. So now we go to do the take, and he's looking, and Tom is talking to him, and there's no response. Finally go, all right, cut. I said, Dustin, he talked to you, didn't say anything at all, He's, well, I got so involved with the tiles in the ceiling that I didn't hear him. I said, well, we can't, what do we got to do here? This is going to be hard to do anything, And he said, I said, well, I don't know what to do. And I said, look, he's there. He's there. you just don't want to be involved in it because you're counting the tiles and whatever. So I said it would be like, you know, somebody's talking to you going, yeah, 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 yeah. You know they're there, they're talking, but you don't want to pay attention. And then he added that, and that became a character trait that sometimes they go, Ray, yeah, yeah. Ray, do you want to so-and-so? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that yeah became a part of the character. I don't want to deal with you, but yes, you're there. And that became part of the character. And so what happens is it's a combination of his talent, you know, and just throwing something out, and all of a sudden it connects to it, and it just takes you to another place, and it becomes a richer character and a better moment. It just is a long-winded example.
No, it's great. It's
connection of actor to, you know, to director.
How did he get to Judge Wapner? Definitely got to watch Judge Wapner. Definitely.
Yes.
I can hear it the way he would say it. Yeah. Watch Judge Wapner.
It was an interesting thing, and because we were shooting continuity, we can keep adding to it because as we went across country, so we just kept adding little elements to it, little things about underwear and stuff like that becomes, that connects to, in that case, Tom's character. As we were talking one day, I said, and this is all part of the evolution of how things work. I said, we need something, Tom, that you're telling the audience that at least you're trying to make an attempt to deal with your brother, something, you know. And he said, what? I said, I don't know. You gave him fresh underwear, but he won't wear it because it's not from the place that he gets it in Cincinnati. And then you just sort of weave it into the piece in some fashion, just to add a little embellishment here and there. That's all.
Wow.
Where did the hot water come from?
The hot water? In the tub, you mean?
Yeah. What was that? Was that always in the script?
That was in the script, yes. Right. Yeah, that moment was in the script. Yeah.
So Denzel, your directing efforts so far, you've acted in each of them, but in very varying sizes of parts. 2002, again, Antoine Fisher. 5 years later, The Great Debaters, and then almost a decade later, Fences. And I just wonder, did your comfort level at kind of guiding the performances of other actors, did it evolve over that time? Was it initially, you know, a little jarring about how to you know, tell other talented actors what to do, or you know, give them ideas or whatever, or did you feel immediately at home doing that?
You know, I never wanted to be in the movies, but I couldn't get them made unless I was in them. Mm-hmm. I remember Warren Beatty saying, you know, no, be in the movie. You know, he said that's a way in that you are comfortable with, that you know how, that you know about. So I was like, oh, that makes sense. But what was the question again? It was what?
Well, just I mean, were you immediately able to feel comfortable telling other actors what you wanted from them, or was that something that takes time to
do that? First of all, you shouldn't tell other actors what you want from them. That sounds like, you know.
Okay.
So I've been, and Barry can, you know, I've been on movies where it was just the director's movie, and a movie's bigger than that. A movie has a life of its own, and you bring all these talented people together and you let them do what they do best. Now the director's going to get the credit or the blame for it, you know, ultimately, and has to steer the ship. But I want the best around me and want to see them do great.
Now, what about the fact, I think in each of these movies you were working with, in fairly prominent parts, you've got very young actors who, right. I hate to say it, I'm sure grew up on your work, and that's intimidating, I'm sure, for them. How do you go about diffusing,
well, we're all in it together. We're
mm-hmm.
all in it together. You know, there's more pressure because you've had success. There's probably more pressure to be successful again. So, and we're all going to find out together, you know, that the whole family aspect of it and all of that. I really believe in. A great director that I learned that from was Jonathan Demme. The way he treated it, the movie was an extension of the relationships that all these people that he would have around, and that's healthy, and you know, so try to learn from the best.
And how about when situations arise where you are going to be acting in a film you're directing? Do you have anything like what Barry was describing Mel Brooks doing, where there's somebody that you trust who you want to get their take on what you had done in front of the camera when you can't be watching on a monitor or anything?
No, there's nobody I trust. I'm just being honest. 100%. I mean, you know, I can. You know what? One of the things I would do when directing and acting, I would always shoot the other. If it was like a 2-character scene, shoot the other actor first, so I can watch, shoot in their direction. Like we're doing Fences. Shoot Viola. Get her work. I'll be off camera, over my shoulder, whatever. Get that performance, and then we'll come around, and, you know, 4 takes and get out of there.
And I know you said with Fences it was a little bit less stressful because you had played the part. How many times on Broadway?
Yeah, we did, you know, whatever it was, 100 performances, and we'd all won, not we'd all, but we won a lot of awards, and, you know, I knew my job was to make sure I didn't mess it up. Viola already won a Tony Award, so it's like, okay, don't mess it up. Sometimes that's your job, just to, you know. I remember asking the DP, Philippe Rousselot, the first film I directed. I'm like, I don't know, where do you put the camera? He's like, what? I'm like, where do you? I know this is a silly question, but where do you put the camera?
No, well, you know what?
He said in the front. I don't know either. In front. We put it in front. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, we put it in front. You know, 2 people talk, we put it in front of you, or we could put it behind you. Okay.
This leads in, though. That leads in perfectly, though. The next question I was going to ask you guys, which is, who is a director's most important ally on a set? Barry, you know, is it a DP? Is it a producer who you have, you know, deal with things you don't want to deal with? Like, who is the guy that you most need there every day?
Well, it's hard to answer that in this regard because there are a lot of people that have to do things. Production designers, costume designers, they're doing their work prior to that day. But you are designing the piece, you know, others, because what kind of colors do you want to work with? What do we want to do in terms of costumes, etc.? All of those things are all taking place beforehand. So a part of the palette has already been dealt with. And the cinematographer, because you've been talking about things for a long time, so you already know basically what you want to do. You may not know that you want to suddenly be just a little bit off to the left or a little off to the right or that kind of that sort of thing. But a lot of this has been happening beforehand. Not that you're so locked in, but you've discussed it, so we're not just showing up trying to figure out what are we going to do. So a lot of that is on it. And then there's those moments that happen because, say, if it starts to drizzle or whatever else is going to also affect. Do you want to shoot it in the rain or a little rain? Is that better for the scene? Or, you know, you have to experiment at times and take advantage of certain surprises that you are going to come your way. You know, and how do you want to adapt to that stuff? Because there's all these little things that keep happening, which can, one, send you off course, and you went down the wrong road. But a lot of it is in that preparation. And I always think it's like a lot of preparation and then a lot of freedom. So I think it's like a controlled freedom. Here's where we kind of work. And inside of it, it can get messy and you can try all sorts of things to see what moments can be highlighted. Or if suddenly there's discovery. All of a sudden an actor can't remember his lines and there's 3-4 seconds he doesn't say anything, he or she, and all of a sudden that becomes interesting. You know, those are the surprises that you work with all the time.
Denzel, I know you say you don't trust anyone else there on the set, but who would be the guy that you maybe lean on, even, you know, the most when you're directing?
That's funny you ask, because Barry, this is really why I'm here today. What I want you to do is to come by the set. Well, first I have a great producing partner, Todd Black, you know, who I trust completely, and that's that's important. You know, some, you know, a partner that, you know, similar taste and knows me and I know him, and there's a shorthand that goes along with it, and we get things done. You know, it's about getting things done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you guys,
forever.
you both have had very close producing relationships. I know, as you say, Denzel, it's in that case, it's Todd. Barry, for a long time, I think Mark Johnson, and I guess I just wonder, what do you see as the most as the primary responsibilities that you want the producer to deal with that you don't want to necessarily have to worry about when you've got so many other things to worry about? What is the producer at his best or her best?
Well, one is, money. And well, you know, you're a day behind or whatever. You know, it's all of those things like, well, you got to make up a day. Well, how are we going to make up a day because of this and that? So there's a lot of the mechanics of that you don't want to be involved in, that doesn't have to do with the actual the talent in the given moment. What you want to be is so free that that's all you want to pay attention to. You don't want to have to deal with the fact that we got to do this and we got to do that and all of the mechanics of it. Because if you can put that out of your head, then you're just focused on telling the story, getting the performances, finding moments that engage the audience, taking advantage of all those little shifts that take place. And that's where your focus is, as opposed to, well, we have a problem with this and that, or whatever it may be that goes on. I tell you, this is how crazy it gets at times. And when I did Avalon, the first day we're shooting, we have a big parade of animals marching through the street. There was the carnival. When he gets off the train, it's got to go somewhere. And we're going to have this scene, and the young kid is trying to follow the lion in the cage, supposedly, and he comes up to it as the little, you know, wagon goes past with the lion in there. We have like 150 extras. All of these things are going in place, and the lion didn't show up. The lion is on a truck somewhere on the Beltway, and he's coming. There's all these people, and you're going. And I said, okay, let's shoot. And they said, well, the lion's not here. I said, the lion must be here. How could there be 150 people? We got giraffes. We've got this, we got the kid is coming up to the cage. The lion must be in the cage. And so, and they said, what? I'm telling you, no one's going to say there's no lion in the cage. He must be. There's too much activity going on not to have a lion.
It's the lion's point of view.
Yeah. The lion's point of view. And so we shot it. There is no lion, but sometimes you have to say, no, we're not going to pick up that moment. You know what I mean? Yeah. I know that's, and you have to make some of those decisions. Otherwise, you know, you're whatever. But logic told you we can get away without that particular, moment. I know it's a crazy story.
That's great.
It's all of these. There's so many little things that happen, and I know, Denzel, you're obviously aware of it. Is that, and some little thing happens, and you have to figure out a way to deal with it, and still serve the film, and maybe even elevate the moment.
You got to make the day.
Yeah.
Now,
you got to make the day.
Denzel, you've talked about the fact that in choosing the roles that you're just acting in, forget about the ones that you've directed, there you have in your mind a bit of a formula, I think, when you read the script and you think about who an audience might be and all of that. How about when you're picking something that you're going to direct? Is there any kind of formula in your mind? Because you, like Barry, you guys have very strong track records at not only making movies that are critically appreciated, but also do commercially well. And I don't think it's an accident. So I would just wonder, what are the considerations about what you're going to direct with these three that you've done so far?
It didn't happen like that. It's sort of, like I said, I sort of backed into it. Even acting, it depends upon what you just done. Like I did a play on Broadway, Iceman Cometh. I wanted to do something. I wanted to lighten up. Change the. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Just wanting to do something. Silly or like I did the movie Flight was so heavy that I did Two Guns with Mark Wahlberg afterwards, which was like a silly movie because I wanted to do something silly because Flight was just too heavy. So sometimes it's as simple as that.
Yeah. How about the emphasis on the pressure to have a big opening weekend? I want to ask you about this, Barry, because people may not remember, but Rain Man was not a giant hit out of the gate. It became one, but I looked it up. First weekend, it was at number 2. Not a huge number even at number 2, but it was given time to find an audience, and I believe eventually climbed to number 1 and stayed there for a very long time, and in the end made a ton of money. But is that a movie that if you made that same movie today, would that have been written off as a failure after, not a failure, but a disappointment after a weekend just because of the way things have changed?
Yeah, it would have been, gone in today's world. I mean, we did $6 million on an opening weekend, and they weren't that thrilled. And then all of a sudden it did 7, and then it did 8 million the next week, and then 10 million, and then 12 million the week after that. And it just kept going up by the week. And that almost doesn't exist anymore. There is no kind of gestation period where somebody's telling somebody and selling it, and the numbers start to rise. I think that's, I'm sure there's a few cases or examples that you may be able to pick up, but that's a difficult thing now. It's hard for that to get that momentum. I mean, no one would have thought, and it was bigger foreign than domestic. I mean, it was gigantic. I mean, in Japan, it did like 50 million. This is in $88. I mean, it was it's also part of, I don't think you get that opportunity anymore. And on the other hand, it's hard to make those kinds of films now and survive in the marketplace. So most of them get killed before they ever, move along. So it's a different era in that regard.
Yeah, I think the only one that I can remember in recent years that kind of found a big audience after staying alive for a little while was The Greatest Showman, that musical with Hugh Jackman. Built it up. But so what do we do? What does it do to you guys and where you want to take your projects to know that the mid-range budget movies that you seem drawn to? Rain Man was a $25 million movie, I think. Roman J. Israel, 22. The Natural, I think, was 28. Fences, 24. Those movies that are not massive budget or very tiny, like even the Humbling, which I think, Barry, you've said was like 2 million. Those are the ones that are going away. And so I wonder, does that drive you more towards TV, for instance, where you've had a lot of success in the last few years, Barry? Is that because you felt that the kinds of projects you wanted to do would be harder to get off the ground in film?
Well, all 3 of those, because I did, Paterno and Kevorkian, You Don't Know Jack, and the Madoff piece with De Niro. You couldn't do that theatrically at all anymore, unfortunately. And so that's a place to go do it. I mean, there's no question, the streamers and the HBOs, that's not going to go away, and that's probably going to continue to increase as time goes along. And that's where it's going to go. And then, of course, there'll be a theatrical component in terms of what that content's going to be. I don't know. But I think you're going to see more. The more daring storytelling is going to turn up mostly in the streamer world. It's unfortunate because there is the idea of an audience to see something is incredible. I was saying this too, and it's not like you go to the movies and there's 250 people. I remember going to the movies as a kid and seeing Psycho, and there were 2,000 people in the auditorium. It was one of those big old places, 2,000 people in Baltimore. And when that shower scene happened and the screaming, it was 2,000 people screaming. It took 10 minutes for the auditorium to settle down. It wasn't like, whoa, and then it's over. It just went on and on. I mean, it was like an event in itself. And those things apply to other films as well in different, different forms. That's an experience that's priceless. And that I think is disappearing from the marketplace as we begin to shift. But at the same time, everything keeps evolving, and you have to find a way to be able to do the work that you care about. And that's all you can do. I mean, Denzel just, in terms of doing Fences, he got it made. It exists. It's out there. It made its mark. It'll be there, forever, and that's special. So you just have to find a way to tell the story that you feel passionate about.
Did you want to add anything to that, Denzel?
No, that was it right there.
Yeah.
I was listening. I was just sitting there nodding my head. That's right.
Yeah. So, Denzel, when members of your family said they wanted to get into the business, like you, particularly, I guess, John David, who's an actor, what if any advice did you give based on your experience in the business? And I'm going to ask Barry, of course, in a moment about
he didn't
Sam.
ask me. And I was the last one in the family to realize that he was an actor all along. Really, I didn't see it coming. He had a successful career in sports and made it to the NFL, and I didn't know that all his life he really wanted to be an actor. To be honest with you, I missed that somehow, because probably part of it was because of what I wanted him to be, because of what my dreams were, because I didn't make it as a football player. So I'm living my dreams through him, and all the time he wanted to be like his, in some ways like his dad. So I guess that's life. Interesting.
And Barry, what about Sam?
Sam always, when he was like a toddler, I used to have him in the editing room, and he'd be playing on the floor, and we'd be cutting. So he was always around film in one way or another. And he sort of always gravitated, I think, to writing, the way where he first began. And then I think there was never a time when I think that's what he would like to do. So he seemed to be zeroed in on that very early in his life.
Got it. Well, just one last question from me before we take some from the audience. But, thinking about that next generation of talent in this business, Denzel, I want to ask you, you very quietly champion and support a lot of young people in this business. And one of them, it turned out, someone who said he might not have wound up acting in films had he not been granted a scholarship, which he later found out had been provided by you very generously, was Chadwick Boseman, whose last screen performance, I believe, is in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, this film that you've produced, which will be on Netflix soon. And I just wonder if it's not, an imposition, if you can just talk about what made him so special, because a lot of us have been thinking about that lately.
A gentle man, very, very gentle soul, a great talent, obviously, thrust in this position of, this. I remember, and I've told the story, going to see Black Panther. I was in New York, and I went backstage after the show. It was a what do you call it, a red carpet and all. I didn't want to go out there in front where the people were, so I went backstage and I saw Chad, and I saw Ryan Coogler, and then I went to watch the movie, and I remember shedding a tear because I was like, man, these young guys are just gone, like they taken over. Barry, no matter what, sooner or later you're not going to make it all the way around the track. You hand the baton off and you watch the young boys run.
All right.
And watching that movie, that's what I felt like. I'm like, man, they're gone. Who knew he didn't have much life left? But he didn't get cheated. We did.
Absolutely.
He didn't get cheated. We did. I pray for his poor wife and their family. They got cheated. but he lived a full life.
Absolutely. Well, we have some questions that have been submitted in writing from viewers. We have a lot of viewers who are excited to be here today, and we're going to start with Mary Armstrong asking Barry. Barry, you're one of my favorite directors. What was it like working with Warren Beatty and Annette Bening on Bugsy? Comes back to, Denzel brought up Warren earlier. He's definitely got his experience and his perspective on things. What was your experience there on Bugsy with him and Annette?
It was terrific. We remained friends, and actually we got friendly. He sold Diner and called me up, and we met that long ago. So it was like 10 years later, ultimately, that Bugsy came up. And some people would ask about Annette and he and, the relationship, because that's when they ultimately, fell in love. And they asked me about it. I said, no, I didn't even think it. I just thought they had great screen chemistry.
Good answer.
Yeah. Well, Denzel, we have a question from Asha James, who's a Toronto-based actor, primarily in theater. She says she's found that having a niche or an essence is almost essential in film, whereas in theater, you're able to move more fluidly in casting. How did you find your niche, and do you have any tips on developing?
What does that mean? You find a niche? I don't quite understand.
I'm not sure,
You
but
find
I guess
a niche in film, but not in.
I'm not. I guess that maybe you can kind of be accepted as somebody further from yourself in a theatrical production. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, don't think that way.
Yeah.
That'd be my advice. Just don't think that way, because if you think that way, then that's the way it is. For me, there's no difference in theater, film. Acting is acting. There's no such thing as film acting in my humble opinion. But
I'll just add a quick follow-up, Denzel. If when Broadway reopens, I can we get you back there? I mean, Raising the Sun, you're so great.
23, I think.
Awesome, yeah, because you seem every few years you keep going back. Yeah, it's great.
Working on my chops, man. I got to get better. I'm trying to get better as an actor.
What are you going to do in 2023, Denzel?
Yeah,
Scott Rudin and I have had great success together on stage and in film, and we've been sniffing around a couple. I won't say anything yet, but we've been sniffing around a couple of plays and ideas. He likes Coriolanus.
Oh.
Yeah, I found that interesting.
Well, you said you
relationship.
And you said you started out with a musical. Will you ever go back and do another musical?
No.
All right, this question from Jason Dubray, Mr. Levinson. How do you find your television projects that you've done? These combined with your film work have always been memorable and important. What's the key to finding great material for TV?
Well, I mean, what's the key to finding good material, period? That's that. And then you see where it fits, whether it's, a theatrical or not. But that's all it comes down to. I don't think for instance, Homicide was originally given to me as a book. David Simon wrote it, and as a feature idea. And I thought it would be better as a TV series. And so, it seemed to make sense. It was an ongoing thing, and try to compress it down didn't seem to serve it well. And so an exciting idea is an exciting idea, and ultimately it'll find its own place. And the great thing is when you find a good idea, I mean, when that happens, it's like there's like an energy that you just get excited by. And in many cases, at least for me, if I get excited, it's hard to just go, well, I don't know about this. Let me just leave it. I'm just, there's an emotional connection. You just want to get to it. You want to see it.
Question from Mercedes Williams. Mr. Washington, you've made a great investment in August Wilson, his work, and his hometown, Pittsburgh, where I'm from. What does his work in the city of Pittsburgh mean to you? And is there anything in the works for other August Wilson adaptations by you?
Yeah, we did Ma Rainey. We're developing now the piano lesson. Going to take it to Broadway first, and then Pittsburgh is August Wilson is Pittsburgh, and it's great for us to be able to go back. It's like Barry with Baltimore, I imagine. You know, it's in the people. We can't make the films anywhere else. They have to be made there. You know, just the food people bring us, the neighbors, and the one guy, this old fellow would sit in the backyard, his yard adjoined our yard when we were working on fences, and he'd sit there like he was watching the movie. He said, "Oh, I'm just watching the movie. Watching them make the movie. No, y'all go ahead and make the movie." And he just. And he'd always say, you know, "You want any coffee? You want some coffee, Denzel?" I'm like, "No, I'm fine." "All right, go ahead and make the movie then." Like, "Thank you, sir. We can start now." Mr. Greenlee was his name. Mr. Greenlee would allow us each day to make the movie.
That's great.
You know, that's the real stuff. Then you want to get that in the movie.
Yes.
That's authentic. That's like, how do we capture that?
Right. 100%.
We will close it out with a question from Ariel Hughes, who asks each of you, if you can answer, what is something that you've learned over the course of your life and career that you wish you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self? Barry?
Boy, that's a hard question. I don't even know how to answer it, to be honest with you. I don't know what, mainly because it's sort of hypothetical. You can't go back and tell yourself what you should do when you're 20 years old. So you can't get back there. And in a sense, part of it for me is that you keep learning things as you go along. It's not like, okay, now I learned it all. You never learn it all. Right. I don't care how many movies you do or how many screens, you just don't learn it all. You just keep going and you keep learning and discovering as you go along. So I don't know if I can think going backwards. I can only think about what's next and what's out there.
I like that.
Yeah.
What would I say? Don't do it. That's it. Apply when necessary. Don't do it.
Well, Barry and Denzel, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I hope that you and our viewers have enjoyed yourselves. I know I did. And to everyone who is with us, wherever you are, stay safe and enjoy the rest of this unusual Toronto Film Festival. Hopefully, we'll be back on the ground next year. And in the meantime, stay well.
Right. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Denzel. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.